Welcome to Introduction to Philosophy. I am your professor, Peter Anderson. I will just be going over the syllabus today and just talking a little bit about how the class is going to be constructed, what's expected of you, and some of the things that I would recommend as you take this 7-week course. Just to let you know that what I try to do the best I can is just give you guys material and a lot of discussion, and I try to give you back your journals as well as your assignments pretty quickly within the week. Get on me if you haven't seen anything, and just so that you kind of know where you're going or where you're heading. This is I think the fifth time I've taught this class, fourth or fifth time that I've taught it, and I've always really liked it. I've always enjoyed a lot of the students. I've loved seeing how everyone has just how they become very good writers over time, and how they go from just not feeling very intimidated by the material or not feeling like they could really engage the material to toward the end actually not only engaging it but taking it a lot further. So I'm hoping to see that again this time. But I don't want to make this video too long. Let's just go over the syllabus. I did update it, and it should be in your modules for Philosophy 100, fall 2018. So the course description just says it right there that you're going to be talking about a lot of philosophical traditions. One of the things that the book does that I feel like does very well. This is the 9th edition, by the way. That it's the big questions. Is that it starts out, with basic philosophical questions. What is philosophy? And then after that, what is the meaning of life? It goes from asking questions to getting more of a narrative, and then talking about the question of God. And I feel like Solomon and Higgins, they had such a mastery. Solomon actually died about 10 years ago. His wife, Kathleen Higgins, is actually still alive. She teaches at University of Texas in Austin. But he had such a mastery of the material, and she did as well, and she does as well. And I feel like they guide the reader very well, and not just the history of philosophy, but really the foundation of philosophy. A lot of philosophy is just a difficult question until you kind of start asking what is the meaning of our existence, those types of things. So hopefully you could follow the book really well, and I'll do the best I can in my lectures to try to explain where they're going with that. But you'll also explore this academic study of philosophy. I don't think a lot of people know this, but philosophy majors actually do have play a prominent role in technology, and you can actually get a pretty good job after you if you decided to major in philosophy. A lot of people don't know that. One of the reasons is because philosophy majors tend to be pretty creative, and they tend to take companies in a very unique and sometimes ethical direction. And one of the nice things about having a philosophy major, if you decide to study it, is that you'll be able to ask certain questions amongst your workers that maybe other colleagues would never ask. And we'll be talking about such things as the meaning of life, God, symbols, and the nature of reality, search for truth, self-expression, freedom, what freedom even means, is there such a thing as free will, or are we determined? And then also just ethics, the different types of ethics that we'll be talking about, everything from utilitarianism to, which just basically says what works is right, to Immanuel Kant and his categorical imperative, which is basically like a golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated, to relativism, that just says that there's no real truth, but it's just your own truth. And how does that build a kind of ethical system? And we'll be looking, what I'll be doing too is just trying to push you to see a framework, how philosophy basically works. Philosophy is it can be very complex, but it doesn't have to always be complex. It's more about asking the right question, and asking questions that take subjects or take dialogue to a much deeper level. And we'll talk a lot more about that throughout the semester. The outcome, you'll be able to hopefully recognize logical thought, logical theory, valid arguments versus invalid arguments, strong arguments versus weak arguments. What's the difference between those four things? We'll also be talking about how to recognize consistency. One thing that you want to do when you're reading, whether it's a magazine or listening to CNN or Fox News or whatever you listen to, is to be able to recognize incoherent thought. And you'll be surprised after reading philosophy. I'm hoping that by the end of this course, you'll see that there's a lot of incoherent thought from a variety of people on a variety of political backgrounds, not just from a liberal perspective, but also a conservative perspective, and even people that are in the middle. So philosophy kind of makes you to be the to ask those uncomfortable questions that at the dinner party. And I think it actually makes you a better person, because one thing that philosophy is supposed to be doing is that it teaches you a lot of humility, that you don't know everything, and the people that you talk to might not know everything. And if they are claiming a particular argument or a point, whether it be anything from the Kavanaugh hearings to whether or not you should kneel during the flag to should we decrease taxes, to what's the differences between capitalism and in the free market versus a kind of more socialistic perspective. All of those things, you read those things, you see those things throughout, whether it's on Facebook, on Twitter. Everybody has a kind of idea about how things work. And if you study good philosophy, you could immediately recognize that you might see some kind of inconsistency, some arguments that just don't work for you. And that's the thing. That's why philosophy can sometimes be uncomfortable when we are in an age where everybody thinks of themselves as experts on a particular field, is that you're kind of the uncomfortable voice in the sense that you're reading hopefully good philosophy. What I tell my students in my psychology class is kind of the same thing. We're all psychologists. The question is, do you want to be a good psychologist or a bad psychologist? Same thing when it comes to philosophy. We're all philosophers, whether you like it or not. You've already been philosophizing since probably since you were about 4 years old. I actually have three children, 6, 4, and well, I have a newborn. She's about to turn a year old. But my 6-year-old and my 4-year-old actually have already engaged in the art of philosophy, in the sense like, why can't I have a brownie? I did my homework, or I cleaned up my room. Can I have a brownie at this time instead of the other time? So you'll be surprised at how much we actually use argumentation, not necessarily argumentation where we're screaming at each other, but just to prove a point. And so what we want to do is that we want to be good philosophers, because like I said, we're all philosophers. Why not just be good at it? So hopefully by the end, you'll actually be a good philosopher, and you'll be able to recognize argumentation that is convicting or convincing. Attendance, out class assignments. I know it's was this online. I guess the most important thing on that is just make sure that you turn everything in on time. So if you go back to, or if you go down, again, you can kind of skip over missing class and stuff like that. But it is important in context of the online course that you just write things down as quick as right on the when the assignment is due. So the way this is. The way I've constructed this course is basically just making sure that you write about 2 pages at least on each chapter. Now that is actually not a lot of writing. The reason why that is because each chapter is extremely dense. They've got tons of material in it. What you would like to do in your journal, and if you would like me to, I could always send you like an example of what a good journal looks like. I'd be more than happy to do that. But a good journal is basically, you read the chapter, and some of these chapters are actually about 30 or 40 pages long. I want you to just, take as many notes as you possibly can. You could do that on a Word document while you're taking notes. I would probably encourage you to do that. And then while you do that, kind of fill in the gaps and tell me more or less what the author is kind of talking about. You don't obviously have to talk about every single little point, but just generally, what is he talking about? And you could pick a few points that Solomon and Higgins are making in the book, and then write about that in your journal. It's very easy to do if you're actually kind of writing notes while you're reading, and then kind of using that as your source material, so that when you actually write the journal, you have some substance. What I've noticed that people that struggle with journals, they don't actually use the book. They just try to read the chapter and then just kind of come up with material on their own. And there's two mistakes that they often run into. The first one is they never finish the 2 pages because they're just trying to use their own words, and I think they often get really frustrated, and the assignment itself gets very frustrating for them, and they get a little discouraged. What I would encourage you to do is that this is a big book, and there's tons and tons of bibliography and just resources and sources. Use it as much as you can. I mean, obviously you can't commit plagiarism, but what you can do is integrate and utilize the book as much as you possibly can. This is your friend, and you know what I would encourage you to do is just use it as much as you can while you're writing your journal. Work hard, but also know what you're doing, and try to be as concise and clear as possible while kind of following where the author is going. So that's just my feedback for you. The other thing too is I'm kind of a stickler when it comes to making sure that you finish at least 2 pages. So I'm gonna grade pretty harshly, if I could use that word, if you're giving me like just 1 page. I'm gonna probably knock that down significantly. So you don't want to do that. You really want to make sure that you're giving me at least 2 pages. The reason for that is again because you have so much material there. It should be pretty easy to write that. And that's actually for you. The other nice thing about journals is that you're taking constant notes, and then you're doing it in a way where I could see it. And it's once you're able to explain what the chapter's about, it just makes your midterm and final a whole lot easier. Your midterm and final, there will be a study guide when we do that. When we do those midterms and finals, and obviously you want to make sure that you've got a good mastery of the material. I'm very good at getting back with my students, so I am more than happy to get back with all of you about that, about anything that that you may have questions about. The other thing too is the next thing is that the books, I think you guys have that. The journals are all good. The last thing is just the discussions. There will be some discussions in Canvas. So right there, you just always want to give at least 2 responses per week to the discussion tab. You want to be able to offer quite a bit of material as much as you can. Just discuss. I'm not going to be just talking about grammar or anything like that. I'm not going to be just talking about grammar. Just use the incorrect grammar right there. You see how? But I'm not going to be grading your grammar when it comes to discussions. And then finally, obviously, the midterm and final, they're going to be pretty substantial, about 25 points each. So that's about 50% of your grade. So you want to make sure that, again, you have a good mastery of the material. And then finally, there's going to be a final paper. The final paper will be about roughly about 7 to 9 pages long. And what it will constitute is just you want to use at least about 6 to 10 materials or resources that are going to cover your argument. And this final paper can be any kind of topic that's covered in your book. So if it's like ethical egoism, if it's like utilitarianism, is it the philosophy of science? It's if there's God, if it's pantheism or all of those. You could just basically just what you want to do is just write on that. And what I have as far as good writing in philosophy, I have some good tips for you for you to follow on how to write a good philosophical paper. Please let me know if you guys need any help on that section as well. So that's pretty much it. Again, I do try very hard to always get back with all of you. I'm looking forward to teaching this course. It's a fun course, and thanks again for your time. And please email me, text me. I'm also good. I also am good at texting. Just make sure you do it not at like 11 o'clock at night or something. But even though I probably will be awake. All right. Thanks, everyone.